Whenever some huge new technology just explodes onto the scene, what's the first thing we do? We look to the past, right? We try to find a historical comparison to help us make sense of what's coming. And with artificial intelligence, well, the first comparison that jumps to mind seems pretty obvious. And yeah, it totally makes sense. You've got this insane frenzy of investment, tech stocks are going through the roof, and there's this feeling that the world is about to change forever. But here's the thing about the dot-com bubble. It didn't just fade away. It crashed, hard. And that's where that comparison starts to feel, well, a little shaky. This quote here from How Stuff Works, it really gets to the heart of it. See, the dot-com era was about new ways to do business. But the Industrial Revolution, that was about a fundamentally new way to live. It completely changed how things were made, where people lived, the very structure of society itself. So, that brings us to the big question, the one we're going to dig into today. Is this whole AI boom just another stock market roller coaster? Or are we living through the opening act of a revolution as massive as the one that gave us factories and steam power? To really get our heads around the potential scale of AI, we got to put the dot-com playbook aside for a minute and pull out a much older map, the one for the Industrial Revolution. Because when you do that, the parallels are, wow, they're pretty startling, and they might just tell us a whole lot about where we're headed. All right, so let's start with the technology itself. I mean, every big revolution has an engine, right? Something that actually powers all the other changes. The thing about the Industrial Revolution is, it wasn't just one big aha moment. It was more like a domino effect, a buildup of breakthroughs where each one fed off the next. You get something like the spinning jenny, which makes thread way faster. Well, suddenly you need more power to run it. And boom, along comes James Watt with a better steam engine to provide that power. Each invention unlocked the door for the next one. So what's the modern version of those steam engines and factories? They're called hyperscalers. Think of these as the absolutely gigantic, centralized computing warehouses built by the big tech companies. They are the engine rooms of our time, pumping out the raw, brute force power that makes all this AI stuff possible on a global scale. And guess what? We're seeing that same exact cascade of innovation today. First, you had cloud computing laying the groundwork. Then, the explosion of big data gave it something to chew on. That was the fuel. Then you get these super advanced GPUs, which are like the specialized factory machines. And all of that together, that's what lets us build the huge generative models we're all talking about now. It's wave after wave of compute, each one building on the last. So when you have a tech revolution, an economic one is sure to follow. But when all this new value gets created, you have to ask a really important question. Who's actually getting rich? You'd think the answer is obvious, right? New machines, mass production, the economy is booming. Surely a rising tide lifts all boats? Well, the data tells let's just say a much more complicated and honestly pretty shocking story. So let's start with the good news. The economy was absolutely on fire. Productivity just went vertical. The entire economic pie got way, way bigger. We're talking a 37% jump in what each worker could produce. Now, you hear a number like 37% more productive, and you think, great, everyone must have gotten a huge raise. But that's not what the historical data shows. Not at all. Yeah, for the average person, real wages just stayed flat. The world was transforming, incredible new wealth was being created, but almost none of it was going to the people actually doing the work. So if it didn't go to the workers, where did all that money go? It went to capital. I mean, look at this data from the economic historian Robert Allen. It's wild. The slice of the national pie going to labor actually shrank. Meanwhile, the slice going to the owners, the factory bosses, the investors, it absolutely exploded. The rewards of the revolution got sucked right up to the very top. Okay, now to be fair, there is a huge difference here. The dot-com thing was all hype and shaky debt. A lot of those companies weren't really making any money. Today's AI boom? It's being paid for by the massive profits of some of the most stable, powerful companies on the planet. The demand is real. But even with that solid foundation, that old pattern of wealth concentrating at the top, it's a powerful echo from the past, and we'd be foolish to ignore it. You know, progress is never a clean, straight line. Every big leap forward leaves a messy footprint. It creates these side effects, these unintended consequences that society has to deal with, sometimes for generations. Back in the Industrial Revolution, those costs were social, right? Awful working conditions, kids in factories, cities that were just gross and overcrowded. Today's hidden costs are different, but they are just as big a deal. We're talking about a crazy thirst for energy and water, plus this whole new problem of making sure our algorithms aren't biased. The word compute is kind of abstract, so let's make it real. Look at where the power in a data center actually goes. Sure, the servers doing the thinking use the most juice, but get this, almost a third of all the electricity is used just for the air conditioning, literally just to stop the whole thing from melting. And it's not just about electricity. This number, it's just staggering. According to Pew Research, by 2028, just the big US data centers could be gulping down 33 billion gallons of water a year for cooling. That is a massive environmental footprint that we're only now starting to wrap our heads around. So, okay, we have this new tech that's shaking up the economy and hitting the environment. What's the last piece of this puzzle? It's how our laws and our rules, which were all written for an older world, try to keep up. And the short answer is, they don't. At least not at first. This legal case right here perfectly sums up the problem. This guy, Stephen Thaler, he argued that his AI should get credit as the inventor of a piece of art it made. The court's answer? A flat no. Our laws are written with humans in mind. They demand a human author. And that ruling just screams how unready our legal system is for a world where machines can actually create. And the legal mess isn't just about what AI makes, it's about what it eats. It's about the data it's trained on. You have artists suing, saying, hey, you scraped my entire life's work without permission to train your model. The AI companies fire back. No, that's fair use. We're making something new. And the courts, they're stuck right in the middle, having to basically redefine what words like originality and ownership even mean anymore. So, after all this, what's the big takeaway from looking back at the Industrial Revolution? It's that these moments are never just about the cool new gadgets. They are about everything else. They rewrite the rules of wealth and power, they reshape society, they impact the planet, and they force us, whether we like it or not, to ask some really big questions about what kind of world we actually want.
Look, history isn't telling us what's going to happen. It's not a crystal ball. It's more like a lesson book. The steam engine made mass production possible, but it didn't decide about child labor laws or workers' rights. People did. Society did. And that's where we are now. AI is showing us what's possible. But the real work, the hard part, deciding what's fair, what's right, and what's just, that's on us.